It was a quiet autumn evening in Ridgewood, a small town hidden in the Appalachian Mountains. The old houses sat still under a clear, starry sky, and the air smelled of pine and distant wood smoke. John Harper, an amateur astronomer who loved the stars, sat alone in his small, messy observatory on the edge of town. It was his favorite place, peaceful and away from everyone, where he could lose himself in the vastness of space. John had always been fascinated by the stars because they seemed full of endless possibilities, something Ridgewood, with its simple and predictable life, didn't offer. As a child, he had dreamed of being an astronaut, but life led him in another direction. He became a high school science teacher and spent his evenings looking up at the stars from his homemade observatory. That night in the observatory, something unexpected was about to happen, something that would change John's life forever. As he looked through his telescope, scanning the usual stars and constellations he knew so well, something strange caught his eye. A bright flash of light streaked across the sky, much brighter than a shooting star. At first, John thought it might be a meteorite, but then he noticed it was moving too slowly and in an unusual way. "What the heck?" he muttered, adjusting his telescope to follow it. The object seemed to be coming down towards Earth. He watched in awe as it streaked down in a bright, fiery arc, growing brighter until it disappeared beyond the horizon. John's heart raced. He quickly checked his coordinates and figured out where it might have landed, just a few miles outside of town, deep in the forest. Could it really be a meteorite, or was it something else? Fueled by curiosity and excitement, John grabbed his backpack, threw in a flashlight, camera, and a few other things and rushed out the door. He jumped into his old pickup truck and sped down the empty roads, gravel crunching under the tires, the dark woods surrounding him. His imagination was running wild with all the possibilities. John had always dreamed of making a big scientific discovery, something that could change the world, and tonight might be his chance. As he got closer to the crash site, the sky above him became strangely dark, with stars hidden behind a thickening haze. He parked his truck at the edge of the forest and continued on foot, following a faint glow in the distance. The forest was eerily quiet, except for the sound of his footsteps on the leaves and twigs. After what felt like hours, but was only a few minutes, John reached a small clearing. In the center was a smoking crater, its edges still glowing with heat. The ground was burned, and the air smelled like burnt ozone. John's heart raced as he stepped closer, his flashlight cutting through the smoke. In the middle of the crater, half buried in the dirt, was a glowing object, an egg-shaped thing unlike anything he'd ever seen. It wasn't stone or metal, at least not any kind of metal he knew. Its surface was smooth and shiny, almost like it was alive, with faint swirling patterns that seemed to move and glow with a soft, otherworldly light. John's mind raced. Could this be space debris, maybe a satellite? But it didn't look man-made. The object was too strange, too perfect in its shape. As he walked around it, he reached out with trembling fingers, both scared and excited. When his fingertips touched the surface, the object responded to his touch with a soft hum, and the glowing patterns on its surface got brighter. John jumped back, his heart racing, but the object didn't seem dangerous. It looked like it was waking up. The surface began to crack, and John watched, holding his breath, as thin lines spread across the egg. The light inside grew brighter, casting long shadows around the clearing. The cracks deepened, and with a soft, musical sound, the shell began to break apart. John's instincts screamed at him to run, but he couldn't look away. Something was inside. As the pieces of the egg fell away, they revealed a figure curled up inside. At first, John couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was too strange to be real. But as the light dimmed and the smoke cleared, he saw her. A girl. She was lying in the broken egg, her skin glowing softly, just like the light from the shell. Her long, silvery hair flowed around her like liquid moonlight. Her eyes were closed, but John could see a faint shimmer behind her pale eyelids. She looked human, but there was something alien about her, something that couldn't be explained. John stood frozen, his mind struggling to make sense of it all. Was this girl from another world? The idea seemed impossible, but there she was, alive, breathing, and incredibly beautiful. Before John could move, the girl's eyes fluttered open. They were unlike any eyes he had ever seen. Deep, glowing blue with patterns that swirled like galaxies. For a moment, their eyes met, and John felt a strange connection, like she was looking into his soul. The girl slowly sat up, her movements graceful even though she looked confused. She opened her mouth and spoke, her voice soft and melodic, but the words were in a language John didn't recognize. The sounds echoed in his mind more than in his ears, and although he didn't understand the words, he knew what she meant. "Who are you?" John's breath caught in his throat. How was she communicating with him? He tried to clear his mind, but the girl's presence was overwhelming. She looked around, her expression changing from confusion to fear. She stood up shakily, her legs weak, and stumbled forward. John quickly reached out to catch her, and when their hands touched, a surge of energy flowed between them, like static electricity but much stronger. Images flashed in John's mind, stars, distant worlds, and a feeling of vastness beyond anything he had ever imagined. The girl looked at him, her eyes wide with desperation. Her next words were clearer, as if she was speaking directly to his mind. "Help me. I am lost." John's heart pounded. He had no idea who this girl was or what was happening, but one thing was certain. She needed his help. Whatever had brought her here, whatever force had carried her across the stars to this quiet corner of Earth, wasn't far behind. The drive back to John's home was tense and unreal. The alien girl sat quietly in the passenger seat of his old truck, staring out the window, taking in the strange sights of Earth. The forest blurred by, with dark shadows and moonlit trees. But John's mind was elsewhere, racing with questions. Who was this girl? Where had she come from? And, more importantly, what kind of danger was following her? Every now and then, John glanced at her. She looked so delicate, yet there was a quiet strength about her. Her glowing blue eyes, though otherworldly, were full of emotions that John recognized: fear, confusion, and deep loss. It was as if she had been ripped away from everything she knew and was now stranded on a planet that was completely unfamiliar. After what felt like forever, they arrived at John's small, weathered house on the edge of Ridgewood. It was a simple place, surrounded by tall pine trees and a sky full of stars. The isolation had always made John feel at peace, but now it felt more like a safe haven from whatever unknown danger might be out there in the night. He parked the truck and helped the girl out, guiding her into the house. She followed him without saying a word, her steps slow and unsure as she adjusted to the gravity and the feel of solid ground beneath her feet. Once inside, John quickly lit a fire in the old stone fireplace, its warm glow flickering across the room. The girl seemed to relax a bit as the warmth of the fire surrounded her, her shoulders lowering. John handed her a blanket, and she gave him a small, grateful nod as she wrapped it around herself. As she sat there, John couldn't help but notice how otherworldly she looked in his simple home. Her silver hair shimmered in the firelight like stardust, and her pale, almost see-through skin seemed to glow softly in the dim light. John sat across from her, unsure where to start. The weight of the situation pressed on him, but he knew they didn't have much time. Whatever had brought her here, and whatever danger she was escaping, might still be close. He cleared his throat, trying to sound calm despite the storm of emotions inside him. "I'm John," he said gently, hoping to connect with her. "I live here in this town. You're safe now, but I need to know. Who are you? Where did you come from?" The girl looked at him, her glowing eyes reflecting the firelight. For a moment, she seemed to struggle to find the right words, as if trying to bridge the gap between their languages. Then, slowly, she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "My name is Era," she began, her accent strange yet beautiful. "I come from a place far beyond your world, beyond your stars, a world called Ender." John leaned forward, captivated by her words. Ender. It sounded like something from a fantasy novel rather than real life. He tried to picture what such a world might look like, but it was too vast to imagine. "We are explorers," Era continued, her voice growing stronger. "My people. We travel the universe, seeking knowledge, understanding, and peace. But something went wrong." Her expression darkened, and she pulled the blanket tighter around her. "We were attacked. My ship, it was destroyed. I was sent here to your planet as a last resort." John felt a chill run down his spine. The idea of an advanced alien civilization was already overwhelming. But now she was telling him that they were in danger. If something could destroy a ship capable of traveling between stars, what chance did Earth have if that same force came here? Attacked by what? John asked, his voice full of worry. Era shook her head, her silver hair falling over her face. "I don't know. It was something dark, powerful, a force that feeds on fear and chaos. It hunts those who travel the stars, leaving destruction behind. My people called it the Shadow." John gripped the arms of his chair tightly. The Shadow. The name gave him chills. It sounded like something from a nightmare, an invisible force that preyed on the weak. He could hear the fear in Era's voice, how she hesitated even to talk about it. "Why did it attack you?" he asked, trying to understand the danger they were facing. Era looked up, her eyes filled with sadness. "I don't know. We were on a peaceful mission, studying the energies of a distant star system. But the Shadow, it came out of nowhere, overwhelming our defenses. My people fought back, but it was too strong. I was the only one who survived." John felt a deep sympathy for her. She had lost everything, her home, her people, her purpose. Now, she was stranded on a strange planet with no idea how to return or what to do next. "I'm so sorry," he said softly, unsure of what else to say. Era nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you, but there's no time to grieve. The Shadow won't stop until it finds me, and if it does, it will consume this world too." The weight of her words hit John hard. This wasn't just about Era anymore. It was about the safety of the entire planet. If the Shadow was as powerful as she said, Earth was in serious danger. "We have to do something," John said, his mind racing. "But I don't know what. We need help. Someone who understands this kind of technology or whatever this is." Era looked at him with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "Is there someone who can help?" Era asked, her voice filled with fear. John thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, Dr. Evelyn Harper. She's an expert in astrophysics and advanced communication technology. If anyone can help us figure out what's going on, it's her." Era's expression brightened slightly. "Then we should go to her before it's too late." John agreed, but could see how exhausted Era was, both physically and emotionally. They had been through so much in such a short time, and she needed rest. "We'll go in the morning," he said gently. "You need to sleep first. You've been through a lot." Era hesitated, but then nodded, clearly too tired to argue. John showed her to the guest room, where she could lie down. As she settled into bed, John lingered in the doorway, unsure if he should say more. But Era spoke first. "John," she said softly, her voice a mix of gratitude and sadness. "Thank you for helping me. I don't know what I would have done without you." John smiled. "You're not alone anymore, Era. We'll figure this out together." She gave him a tired but genuine smile before closing her eyes, the exhaustion finally overtaking her. John watched her for a moment longer, then quietly closed the door. As he returned to the living room, his mind raced. Era's story seemed unbelievable. Yet here she was, an alien girl, a strange egg, and the threat of a powerful force called the Shadow. They had to act quickly. Tomorrow, they would seek out Dr. Harper and try to unravel the mystery of the Shadow. For tonight, though, John needed to prepare both mentally and physically. He had never imagined himself in such an extraordinary situation. But now, there was no turning back. The fire crackled softly as John sat back, staring into the flames. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. He was just a schoolteacher, an amateur astronomer with a passion for the stars. How could he possibly face something as terrifying as the shadow? But then he remembered the look in Era's eyes, the courage despite her fear. If she could face the unknown with such bravery, then so could he. Whatever happened, he wouldn't let her face it alone. As the night deepened and the fire died down, John finally let himself rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, he found comfort knowing he was no longer just a man with his head in the stars. He was a protector, guiding someone lost in a world not her own. By morning, dawn broke over Ridgewood with pale golden light. John hadn't slept much, his mind too busy replaying the night's events. Era slept fitfully in the guest room, likely haunted by the horrors she had fled across the stars. John couldn't shake the feeling of doom, a sense that something terrible was closing in on them. He stood in his small kitchen, staring out at the peaceful forest as his coffee cooled in his hands. It was hard to believe that a place so serene could be threatened by something as terrifying as the shadow. The world outside seemed blissfully unaware of the danger lurking in the darkness between the stars. The sound of footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to see Era standing in the doorway, her otherworldly look made even more beautiful by the morning light coming through the window. She looked tired, with shadows under her eyes, but there was a determination in her gaze that made John feel both comforted and worried. "Good morning," John said, trying to sound cheerful despite the situation. "How are you feeling?" Era gave a small, tired smile. "I've been better," she admitted softly, "but we don't have time to rest. We need to find Dr. Harper before it's too late." John nodded and set his coffee down. He had already decided to seek out Dr. Evelyn Harper, a brilliant astrophysicist who might understand the technology Era was dealing with. Evelyn had been his mentor during his brief time in professional astronomy, and although they had lost touch over the years, he knew she would help if he asked. "We'll head to her lab as soon as we can," John said, "but it's a bit of a drive. She works at an old research facility in the mountains. It's isolated, but that might be a good thing, considering everything." Era nodded in agreement. The shadow is drawn to energy and life. The farther away we are from people, the safer they'll be. John felt a pang of unease at her words. The thought that this shadow could be hunting them, especially Era, was almost too much to handle. But he pushed the fear aside, focusing on what needed to be done. They quickly gathered what they needed for the trip. John packed a few essentials, including his laptop, some notebooks, and whatever food he had on hand. Era didn't have much to bring, just the clothes John had given her and the remnants of the egg, which she insisted on keeping close. John understood. It was a piece of her world, her last connection to her people. As they loaded up the truck, John glanced at the sky. It was clear, but there was a strange heaviness in the air, as if the world was holding its breath. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that something unseen was lurking just beyond what he could see. The drive through the mountains was long and winding, with the road cutting through dense forests and past sheer cliffs that dropped into mist-filled valleys. The higher they climbed, the more isolated they became, with the trees closing in around them like silent guardians. Era stayed quiet for most of the trip, her eyes scanning the landscape, as if she expected the shadow to appear at any moment. After a few hours, they reached the research facility. It was an imposing building built into the mountain, half hidden by trees. The place was old, a leftover from the Cold War, with thick concrete walls and a security gate that had fallen into disrepair. But its remoteness made it a good hiding spot from whatever might be hunting them. John parked the truck and led Era inside. The inside of the facility was dimly lit, with flickering fluorescent lights as they walked down narrow corridors. The air was cold and musty, filled with the smell of stale air and old machinery. John couldn't shake a sense of unease, but he pushed it aside. They were there to find answers, and Evelyn was their best chance. They finally reached the main control room, where the heart of the facility's operations used to be. Most of the equipment was old, dusty, and in use for years, but a few pieces still had some life in them. There, hunched over a bank of computers, was Dr. Evelyn Harper. Evelyn was in her late 50s, with short graying hair and a sharp, intelligent look. She looked up as they entered, her expression changing from irritation at being interrupted to surprise as she recognized John. "John Harper," she said, rising to her feet. "What in the world are you doing here?" John gave a nervous smile. "It's a long story, Evelyn, but we need your help. It's important." Evelyn's eyes moved to Era, her scientific curiosity piqued. "And who might this be?" John hesitated, unsure how to explain. "This is Era," he finally said. "She's not from around here. She needs our help, your help." Evelyn's eyes narrowed as she studied Era, clearly sensing something was different about her. "Not from around here," she repeated, her tone skeptical. John took a deep breath. "She's from another world, Evelyn. An alien, and there's something terrible chasing her. We need to figure out what it is and how to stop it before it's too late." Evelyn's skepticism turned into shock and excitement. She had spent her whole career looking for proof of alien life, and now one was right in front of her. But then the seriousness of the situation hit her. "All right," she said, her voice steady. "Let's get to work. We need to find out exactly what we're dealing with." As they started working, Evelyn began analyzing the remnants of Era's egg with the facility's advanced equipment to study what it was made of and the strange energy it gave off. Meanwhile, John and Era explained everything that had happened to bring them there. Hours went by as they worked, and the tension in the room grew. Evelyn's initial excitement turned to worry as the data she collected started to show a clearer picture of the danger they faced. "This energy signature is like nothing I've ever seen," Evelyn said, her voice filled with concern. "It's not just a physical being. It's something that can change reality at a basic level. If this shadow is attracted to energy and life, then it's a force of destruction. It consumes everything in its way." John felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Is there any way to stop it?" Evelyn hesitated, clearly struggling with what she had found out. "If this shadow is as powerful as it seems, then we're dealing with something beyond our understanding, something that doesn't follow the laws of physics as we know them." Era, who had been quiet until now, spoke up with quiet determination. "There must be a way. My people fought back against the shadow. They had a weapon, a defense, but I don't know if it will work here." Evelyn turned to her, curiosity in her eyes. "What kind of defense?" Era closed her eyes, trying to remember. It was a form of energy that could disrupt the shadow's connection to the physical world. "We called it the light of a lender, but it was lost when my vessel was destroyed. I don't know if we can recreate it here." Evelyn's mind raced, piecing together what they knew. "If we can understand the energy signature of this light, maybe we can recreate it or at least something similar. But we'll need time, and I don't know how much we have." Just then, the lights in the facility flickered, and the temperature dropped sharply. A heavy presence filled the air, making it hard to breathe. John's heart skipped a beat as he realized what was happening. "It's here," Era whispered, her voice shaking with fear. "The shadow has found us." Panic gripped John as he looked around, trying to figure out where the threat was coming from. But the shadow wasn't a physical thing that could be seen. It was something else, existing on the edges of reality and feeding on fear and chaos. Evelyn quickly moved to the control panel, trying to stabilize the facility systems. "We'd be lucky to have you," John said with a smile. Era returned the smile, her eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you, John. You've given me a home when I had none." Dr. Harper nodded, her expression softening. "And if you ever need anything at all, you know where to find me." The three of them stood up slowly, still feeling the effects of their battle, but also feeling stronger together. They stepped outside, taking in the fresh morning air as they looked out at the world they had fought so hard to protect. As the sun rose higher in the sky, warming the mountains, they knew the future was uncertain, but for now, they had each other and hope. Sometimes, that was all they needed. Epilogue. The days that followed felt like new beginnings. Era began to explore her new home, learning about Earth's wonders with the same curiosity she once had for the stars. John and Dr. Harper helped her adjust to her new life, guiding her as she discovered the beauty and complexity of this strange world. They kept the story of their encounter with the shadow a secret, known only to a few. The world continued on, blissfully unaware of the cosmic battle that had taken place in the mountains. For John, Era, and Evelyn, life changed in many ways. Era found peace and belonging on Earth, her connection to this world growing stronger every day. She studied Earth's ecosystems, learned about its people, and shared her knowledge of the stars with John and Evelyn. John returned to teaching with a renewed purpose, inspired by Era's bravery. He knew the universe was vast and mysterious, but he also knew humanity could face any challenge as long as they worked together. Dr. Harper continued her work at the facility, determined to expand human knowledge. She understood there were other threats out there, but she also knew they weren't alone in their fight. Life in Ridgewood returned to a sense of normalcy, with the memory of the shadow fading into the background as new adventures awaited. For those who had faced the darkness and won, the experience left a lasting mark, reminding them that even in the face of the unknown, hope and courage could light the way. As the years passed, the bond between John Era and Evelyn grew stronger. Together, they continued to explore the mysteries of the universe, each day a new chapter in their journey. And though the stars still called to them, they knew their greatest discoveries were yet to come right here on Earth.